Hi everybody, this is Katie Vandermeer. Welcome to Chapter 4. We're going to start by talking about these two things out of our book. We're going to talk about the file system hierarchy standard very briefly, and then look at some commands to manage files and directories. There's a lot of fun things in this chapter, primarily what we're going to learn in this section here, and then finding or how to set permissions for files and directories. So please watch the whole video series on this, and I'll try to keep them as quick and short as possible, but yet as informative. So read the chapter first because that will help. What I have here is what we're going to cover in this first video on managing files and directories. So the first thing that we looked at that we're going to look at in the first section of the file hierarchy standard is common directories that you'll see in all Linux and most Unix systems as well. You always have a bin directory, a boot directory, a dev, an etc, a library, and all of the rest of these directories that are typically in a file system once you install it. So very similar to when you install a Windows system, you have a program files directory and then a documents directory and a pictures directory. Those things are created automatically, and then you can store different things or create files in different areas, or use them to, or the other files are there to run the operating system. So that happens in Linux as well. When we install, we get a set of directories that are there. Now what's there, if we look at our system and we go to the root of the system, which is the /, you could do an ls to see those directories, or remember the ls-f option, and the / after something indicates that it's a directory. So there's the dev directory, the home directory, the media, the mount directory, lost and found, roots home directory. All of these are built when we installed our OS. Now, there's one website I left you at the end of this document that I'll share. This is the hierarchy standards document, and it is quite long, but it explains what all of those directories do. 52 pages, it's not fun reading, but it is helpful if you need to know a little bit more about what is in the home directory or what should be in there, or why does the mount directory exist. So this is a really great file just to keep for your future, studying. If I want to know, let's say, I want to go, there's the var directory, but let's say I want to know what's in this directory here. Then, okay, here's the name of this directory and what is the purpose of it. It's the general configuration files for defining high-level parameters of the HTML systems, blah, blah, blah. That I don't have a clue, but other directories such as the etc directory, the highest level, it contains configuration files. We work a lot with the etc directory in certain parts of this class because we configure files to run our operating system. So that's what's in there. And now, any directories that are in the etc, like the opt or the x11, this tells us what's in those directories. So this is a very helpful document that you'll want to bookmark for your uses. Okay, before we start working with some of the commands that we're going to learn, I want to give a couple reminders. pwd is a command to print working directory, and this is helpful. Let me move over here so you can see my thing. This is helpful because if you're moving around using the cd command and you forget where you are, and you notice that this shows us where we are here, command line, but always run a pwd if you need to know what your current working directory is. The other thing we learned last unit, relative versus absolute path names. a relative path names start from where you are currently located. So I'm in the etc directory. If I wanted to go into this PKI directory or this Plymouth directory, I could use a relative path to do that using the cd command, like that, because I am in the parent directory. Now I could have also got into that PKI directory using an absolute path, which would have been / because anytime you use an absolute path, you always use a / and you start at root. And that's in the etc directory and then the PKI directory, and that would have moved me there too. Now this first command only works if you're in the parent directory. The relative path is dependent on where you are in the system. The absolute path, this command would work from any place in the system. So I could be in my home directory. Whoops, I typed the wrong thing. I'm now, if I do a pwd, I'm now in my home directory as user1. And if I ran this command again, it would still move me to that directory. But if I were in my home directory here and I tried the relative path, which was this, it says no such file directory because it's looking for a directory called PKI right under where I am. That's the difference between relative and absolute path. Let's see. Now, you'll notice I'm using my up arrows to repeat commands. That is part of the bash shell because it remembers our command history, and it's very useful when you're typing especially long commands. ls-f we already looked at. Oh, and then I want to go to my home directory again. And one command I want to teach you is a command called touch. Touch is a command to timestamp files. So for example, project 4. The last time I used this was on May 18th. Today's date is May 30th. So if I wanted to update that time on that file, I could do touch project 4 and then I don't have permission for some reason. And then what it should do is update that file. Oh, I know why I don't have permission, because that file was created by root and I'm user 1. So let's fix that. Let's super user over to root. So everybody, if you're following along and you have the same thing, su root. There we go. And let's try this again. So project 4, this, remember when we use LL, it's the shortcut for ls-l, and it showed me I was previously user 1 and I don't have permission. So now I'm going to do touch on project 4 and run LL again. Notice I didn't get an error this time, and now here we go. It updated that file, so it timestamped it with the current time. That's the purpose of touch. Now, as we're creating files and directories in this chapter, it's useful to use touch to create a file so you don't have to open up a file in VI and save it and put something in there. There will be parts of this section where we'll do things like I'll say create 3 files in the user 1 home directory. So you could do touch file 1. And then if you did an ls, you'll see that creates a file. Or you could do touch and then do like file 2 and file 3. And then it will create those 2 files. Now there's nothing in there, but it just creates a file so that you can like test it, or you can test it, use it for testing, like moving things around or copying files. So that's why I wanted to show you Touch. Um, we'll use it a lot in the semester just to practice creating, either updating timestamps on files or practice creating files without having to open them up in VI and create them, which is a little bit longer. So I'm going to remove those files real quick because I don't need them. And this is actually one of the commands that we're going to learn later on. Yes, yes, and yes. All right. So moving on, we're going to learn three major commands in this section: the make dir, the move, and the copy command. And I'll try to keep this video short, but there's a lot in this particular section. So open up your system, please. Pause the video if you need to, and log in as you want to log in as user 1 because we're going to modify and create a directory structure in user 1's home directory. Now I'm root, so I'm going to go back to user 1. SU is super user, and then you do SU and then space whoever you want to act as, root or user 1 or user 2 or whatever your usernames are. And in this case, I want to act as user 1, so I'll do su user 1 sudo to that user account. And then I want to go to my home directory, which is where I am already, but just if you are not in the same place, to get to your home directory easily, just do cd space tilde, which is that upper left hand key on the left hand side of your keyboard, and then hit enter, and you can do a pwd to see that you're in the home user 1 directory. Now, in order to learn these commands, make, dir, move, and copy, we are going to create a directory structure. And the directory structure is on this document right over here. It's here. It's a directory structure I just made up, and we're going to create that so we have some things to work with. So to begin, we'll look and notice that when we are in our home directory, we already have a directory called documents. So to begin making these directories like CIS 132 and CIS 232, we could either use an absolute path or a relative path, or we could use a common path if we're in that directory. So we'll do it the easiest way possible, which is using the relative path. And let's move into this documents directory that's already created. So we'll do cd documents. Now everything in Linux is case sensitive, and you'll notice that the documents directory is a capital D. So make sure you type that, otherwise it'll say no such directory found. Okay, now we're here in the documents directory. We're going to use the command make dir, mkdir, to make these two directories that are on the same level, 132 and 232. So mkdir and then CIS 132. Now you could hit enter here and it will create the first one. Or if you want to save time, you could do a space and then do CIS 232 and then hit enter. And now if we do an ls, you'll see, or even an ls dash capital F, you'll see we have those two directories that are created. Bam and bam. Under CIS 132, I have 4 other directories called Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, and Chapter 4. And then under CIS 232 directory, I have a old work directory and a shell script directory. So let's go ahead and make those. You can do them however you like. I'm going to stay in my documents directory and then use a relative path to place them. So the first one, mk dir, and then if I want to use a relative path, I could do CIS 132 / and then create this directory called chapter 1. Hit enter. And now this directory is created. Now I'm going to use my up arrow and then replace the 1 with a 2. Now I've made chapter 2. Replace the 1 with 3. Now I have my 4 directories that are inside that CIS 132 directory. How can I tell? Well, I could do ls-r for recursive, a capital R, and you'll see that in the 132 directory, I have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and chapter 4 directory. Now in those directories, the contents would be listed here, and there's nothing in there, so they're blank. Let's go over and make these 2 directories old work and shell scripts. So mk, let's see, I'm still in my documents directory. So I'm going to do mkdir. Go to the top of my screen. I like looking up there better than down there. And I'm going to go into the CIS 232 and then create a directory called old work, and then also create a directory called shell scripts. That was one command that made both those directories. So you could either do one by one or all of them at once. Now this 4th level here, you'll see that these are files because they're named files. Even the red ones down here, the burnt orange ones, those are files that we're going to create. So if we wanted to go into chapter 2 and then create that sample 1, we would just do the touch command. So we could navigate to there, CIS 132, and then into the chapter 2 directory. And then, so now my working directory, I traveled from here, I went and now I'm here. And I'm going to create that sample 1 file. So I'll do touch and call this sample 1. And now I'm going to go back out to up here and then into chapter 4 to create file 1, 2, and 3. Because notice those are in the chapter 4 directory. So I'll say, okay, back out 1, which would be cd space ... and then I go up to 132, and then I could go forward into the chapter 4 directory. But I spelled it wrong. There we go. And that moved me back 1 and then forward into chapter 4. And now I want to create file 1, file 2, file 3. There we go. So now I've used make_dir to create a whole directory structure. One of the very easy ways to see if you made it correctly, and you'll do this a lot with your homework, is to use that -R, capital R option for recursive, and it will show you all of the directories that are below you and files. So if you do a CD to your home directory, so navigate to your home directory, and then do ls-R, if you created everything correctly, you should see the whole directory structure under your home directory. So right here, ls-R, it lists desktop downloads, those, and then in the desktop there's nothing. In documents there are these files, 132, I'm sorry, these directories, which also are represented as files, but 132, 232, and then in the 132 directory, you have chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, and 4. Chapter 1 has nothing, chapter 2 has sample 1, chapter 3 has nothing, 4 has file 1, 2, and 3. In the 232 directory, I have old works and shell scripts, and both of those have nothing. Downloads, nothing. Music, nothing. And these are the rest of the directories on my home directory that have no other files or directories in there. So that is how you use the mkdir command. Now the move command is used to either rename or move a file. So it's very different than copy, because copy keeps an original, whereas move would move a file from one place to another. So let's say that we want to move sample 1 from chapter 2 directory, and we want to move that over to the chapter 1 directory. So we can do that using the mv command. So first, let me clear my screen. Let me find out I'm in my home directory. If we want to use an absolute path, we could start at root. If we want to use relative to where we are, we would just go into this directory first, into here, grab this file, and then back out 1, and then go forward into chapter 1. So there's a couple different ways you could do it. But move takes 2 arguments. Move, what are you moving? I'm going to move, I got to say what I'm going to move. I'm going to move this file, sample 1. So there's my first argument. And that's the location of it, using a relative path. And then the second argument is, where are you moving it to? Well, I'm going to move it into the CIS 132 directory, into chapter 1. Now, if you want to keep the same file name called sample 1, you just hit enter right there. But if you wanted to rename the file, you could say new sample 1, and then it would have a new name. But here, I just want to move the location. So, 2 sample 1. There, I'm getting an error. Chapter 2, did I spell everything right? No such file or directory. Okay, let's try the simple path. I think that's because I have to use a -r option that we'll look at with copy in a little bit for recursive. So let me go into that CIS 132 directory. Oh, that's why. I'm not in the right place. I didn't put the full path. I was typing that. Hold on. I was typing that assuming I was in my documents directory. So let's move into our documents directory. I said I'm going to be right here, but really I was 1 level up. See, that's why it's important to always do pwd to see where we are. Now this command should work. There we go. See, it's helpful to know where you are. So now what I did is I was in the wrong place, so I moved over to the documents directory using cd space documents, and then I did a pwd to print my working directory to verify where I was. So I'm standing right here now. And then I'm moving this CIS 132, chapter 2, sample 1. I'm moving it to CIS 132, chapter 1. Now, if I go into chapter 2, before there was a file there. Now there's nothing there. If I go into chapter 1, before there was nothing there, but now there's a file there. I moved it from here right over to here. That didn't do it how I wanted it to do. I moved it from there. I put it here. There we go. That's how you use the move command. Now, a couple things. Move, remember, it takes two arguments. Get away. It's taking what you're moving and where are you moving it to, and it can also be used for rename. So you don't have to have long paths like we just did as an example. If you wanted to just rename sample1 to sample1.txt, you could just do mv sample1 to sample1.txt, and that just renames the file. But always with move, two arguments. You can also use special characters like the asterisk, and that will move multiple files to a directory. So there's an example in the book where it says mv project and then an asterisk, and then it says move those, so that's the first argument. And the second argument is into a directory called project files. So what you're doing here is taking all of the files that begin with the words project. So if it's like project 1, project 2, project 3, project 4, it would move all 4 of those into a directory called project files. And that's just using the special character, the asterisk. Okay, copy command. This is used to copy a file or directory. So now we have this file called sample1, and we'll start off simple with this. If we take sample1.txt and use two arguments, cp sample1.text, and then copy sample, we'll call it sample1-2.txt. So now you'll see I have two files that are created, sample1-2 and then sample1. It creates a copy of the file, so it doesn't delete it. That's the difference between move and copy. Also, always two arguments are moved with copy. If you want to, both move and copy can be used to move directories or files. Now, a little caveat with the copy command: if you want to copy a directory, you have to use the -R, capital R option, because it won't move it unless you want to move all of the files and directories that are in there. So let's say that I wanted to copy this chapter 3 directory or chapter 1 directory to go back one and then forward into the CIS 232 directory. It gives us an error that says omitting directory chapter 1, and the reason for that is chapter 1 is not an empty directory. It has files in there. So the way that you fix that is by using the capital R option, which means recursive. And now I took this chapter 1 and all of the contents of it, which was those sample files, and I moved it to here. And now I have a chapter 1 directory that's right over here. And it's got two files in there now. So I added a directory here called chapter 1. I added on to that. Right? And then in there it has these files, sample1.txt and sample1-2.txt. My flowchart directory structure is getting smaller. This one here is now modified to That was sample1.txt and sample1-2.txt. If I make this really large, and you can modify it on yours, what we just did with that command is copied all of this directory over to here. So now they look the same. And what was that command again? It was CP for copy, and then a -R for recursive. And we're saying, because we're in the parent directory, we're just saying chapter 1, and then we go back 1 and we move it into CIS 232. Now, as you're using these commands, there's a lot of different ways that you can run them. It just depends on where you are and where you're going. So you really need to know your directory structure, and you need to practice quite a bit. A couple other notes real quick, and then this unit is finished. Or this part of this chapter is finished, but there'll be more videos. Using the dot and the dot command, you can use them to help shorten the paths. So the dot is the current directory and the dot is the parent directory. I've been using this dot to indicate the parent directory in a lot of the examples already. But there's an example in the book, and it says, let's go to the root directory. So now I moved from my home directory to root, and it says copy the actually let me go back to my home directory. It says copy the etc/host file, and then it has a space and a period. And what that period is really the second argument of the copy command. It's copying this file in the etc host directory, which I use the absolute path. It's copying it to my current working directory. So I was in my home directory, and look at it, what this file was not there before. It copied it from the etc directory to my current directory. And you could do that with anything. If I'm in my pictures directory, got nothing in there, and I want to copy that sample1 file, I could do, I'll do this with, let's see, where am I right now? I could do it from the absolute path. So I would say home user 1 and then CIS 132 chapter 1. If I don't make any typos, and then sample1.txt. That's my first argument, and I'm using the absolute path, and then a space, and I'll hit a period, and then enter. And oh, you know what? I forgot that darn documents directory again. And there, that worked without an error this time. And what it did, if I do an ls, is it copied. What am I copying? I'm copying this file to the second argument, period, which is where I currently am. So these dot and the dot, they're very helpful, so you don't have to have this huge, super long file name or path when you're typing things out, because as you notice, what I've done several times is I've made these mistakes because I don't know the whole path, or it's very long and you misspell something. So use those dots to help you navigate. Lastly, there is something called an aliases that are introduced in this unit. Aliases are let me go to my home directory, although you can view them from anywhere. An alias are shortcuts that are set up in the system. So there are some that are already set up, like ls is, or ls-l is the long listing, but somebody set up an alias. The system does a default, so that ll works the same way as ls-l. And why that is because in if I type alias at my command line, you'll see that this alias is set up. Alias ll equals ls-l. And then it adds the colors on there so it's easier to read. You can create any alias. So if I don't like, if I keep typing copy instead of CP for the command, I could say alias copy or CP equals copy. And now when I type copy, it would work the same way as what CP does. So if and then I can type alias here to see that CP is going to be the same as copy. I think I did that backwards though, because I would want to say, yeah, I did. I want to, sorry about that. I would want to say copy is equal to CP. And now I'll set up an alias, and you'll see I can type copy and it's the same as CP, or here ls is the same as, or I'm sorry, ll is the same as ls-l. So that's the correct way. When you do aliases, though, they are through on the command line like I just did here. They're only temporary. When you log off your system and log back in, they will go away. But there is in everybody's home directory an invisible file called .bashrc, and you can open it up in VI and edit it to set up other aliases. So if you do that, be very careful because you don't want to remove anything that's already in there, and you want to be cautious so that you just add other aliases that you would use. You could Google examples of .bashrc files and edit those. We'll also do that later in the semester. Removing files and directories. rm is the command to remove a file. rmdir is the command to remove a directory. However, one popular alias you might want to set up is that interactive alias, so that when you remove, like here, if I rm host, it just removed it. And I was like, darn, I didn't want to do that. Let me copy that back in there. So let's see, host, I just copied it back. So rm-i host makes the process interactive. Do you want to remove it? And then it looks for a yes or a no. So if you say no, then the file's still there. It's an extra level of precaution when you're working with deleting files and directories. So a really common alias you might want to set up in that .bashrc file is to say, okay, rm is going to be equal to rm-i. I hit the wrong key. X out of there. And let me try that again. Alias rm is equal to rm space -i. And now let me check my alias. Now I have a new alias right here. rm is going to be the same as rm-i. So now if I try to remove that host file, it will ask me. So I set up an interactive alias. So I've just did a second level or another level of security. Not really security, but just caution so that I don't accidentally remove files. rm removes files. rmdir will remove directories. rmdir desktop. I don't want to do that, but if I did, it would just do it. If you try to remove a directory, rmdir, that like documents that has files in it, you'll get an error. Failed to remove documents because it's not empty. So the command to do that is rm-r and then documents. And I'm not hitting enter here because if I do, it will just remove everything that I just created. So rm-r will remove a full directory, so directory with stuff in there, or rmdir to remove empty directory. And then you could use the -i option for interactive for any of these commands, like move, copy, and rm. Very useful. So thanks for listening. I know this video was kind of long, a couple short ones that will come up with finding files and a couple other things, but there's a lot in this chapter, so read it and practice. Thanks.